Drifter, and in tonight's video, I'm gonna continue reading Missing 411 North America and Beyond. We're going to pick up right where we left off in Oregon with the last person. If you have not seen any of the other parts, please consider clicking the info card that's gonna pop up and check out the rest of the series. Ronald M. Missing, August 9th, 2012, p.m. Russell Lake, Jefferson Wilderness. Age at disappearance, 52 years. Mount Jefferson at 10,497 feet in elevation is the centerpiece of the Mount Jefferson Wilderness area. The Jefferson Wilderness area is almost exactly 20 miles north of the Three Sisters Wilderness, and it is almost exactly north in the same string of mountains. Ronald M. was hiking with two friends from the Portland area, and they had hiked up to a ridge above Russell Lake near Mount Jefferson. Ronald was a very experienced hiker and had a tent, sleeping bag, photography equipment, and supplies with him. Ronald's two friends stated that they were going to hike down to the lake and put their camp together, while Ronald stated he wanted to stay on the ridge and take more photos. An August 15th, 2012 article on KATU.com had the following statement about Ronald's location. 52-year-old Ronald M. was separated from his party near Russell Lake, about 1 mile north of Mount Jefferson, deputy said. It started to get dark, and Ronald did not arrive at the camp at the lake with his friends. The friends did look for him that night, but he could not be located. The following day, the United States Forest Service and the Marion County Sheriff's Department were notified and started a formal search. The sheriff was notified that Ohm had a medical condition that required daily medication. The path from the ridge where Ronald was taking photos to the point where the camp was at the lake was unmistakable. The lake was in a very clear view during the walk, and the hike was easily made from the point on the ridge. The Marion County Sheriff contacted the Oregon National Guard, and they put helicopters into the air along with planes from the Civil Air Patrol. There were over 200 ground searchers that worked a grid pattern looking for Ronald. Ronald's family members came to the search headquarters and were present during the 6 days that the teams covered the area. At the end of the 6th day, an agreement with the family members was made, and the formal search for Ronald was terminated. Teams did not find any of Ronald's equipment: backpack, hat, camera, sleeping bag, nothing. Searchers stated that they covered 300 square miles and utilized 3,500 search hours. Summary: Ronald was a lone hiker, photographer, and an individual taking medication. He was formally missing near dark of the day he was last seen. He went missing in the area where there are dozens of small lakes in a high-altitude setting with exposed boulders and rocks. A formal 6-day search by National Guard helicopters and Civil Air Patrol produced nothing. Where are these people going? Look at the landscape around Russell Lake. There isn't a lot of vegetation, and it's difficult to get lost from the ridge to the lake. The number of people that have disappeared in this corridor of the Cascades is disturbing. There has been one person to vanish for each of the summer months in 2012, and the last two were over 50 years old and missing approximately 25 miles from each other, both while alone in a wilderness area. I would implore all of you to read Missing 411 Western United States to get an adequate understanding of all the people that have vanished in the Cascades in the Oregon and Washington areas. I tried to steer clear of words that exaggerate a situation, but the Cascades are a dangerous place for whatever whatever reason. Nobody will ever convince me that the single hikers and hunters I have written about just happen to vanish on their own will. Something unusual is happening. People have written to me to explain that the Cascades are a series of volcanoes, both active and inactive, and then ask if the volcanoes could possibly play some role in these disappearances. I don't know. I will admit that the landscape in the Cascades can be rough, but it isn't as extreme as these disappearances imply. Much of the area where the people have vanished is above the timberline, where there isn't that much cover. I have had others write to me to ask if the boulders play some role in these disappearances. I would refer readers to the international chapter on Iceland and read what the folklore states about large rocks and boulders. I would also refer readers to the other missing 411 books where I draw parallels between people who have vanished and their vicinity to large rocks and boulders and exposed granite. It can't be ignored. I can personally guarantee two things about me. I would never hike or hunt the Cascades alone. Even if I was in those mountains, I would be heavily armed or carry a personal transponder. While some of you may claim that I am trying to hype the situation, I don't need to. Anyone with any degree of common sense can read the numbers of people I have documented, the strange conditions under which they vanished, and the stranger conditions under which some have been found, and realize something quite unusual is happening. Everyone involved in the Can-Am Missing Project has a deep compassion for the missing and their families, and we understand that the vast majority has never been exposed to what we are explaining in our books. We hope that the exposure given to the Ronald M case and others listed in this book somehow reveals what is happening and brings closure to the families. As we have now finished Oregon, we will now begin Alaska. Name: Kevin Robert O'Keefe. Date: October 8th, 1985. Time missing: unknown. Age: 36. Sex: male. Location: Glacier Bay National Park, Alaska. Michael Palmer, June 4th, 1999. Time: 4 a.m. Age: 15. Male. Wasilla, Alaska. Charles Palmer V. April 10th, 2010. Time: 7 p.m. Age: 30. Male. Talkeetna, Alaska. Gerald Berry. October 10th, 2011. Time: 6:45 p.m. Age: 53. Male. Fairbanks, Alaska. Paul Michael Lemeter. July 4th, 2012. Time: 7 p.m. Age: 66. Male. Seward, Alaska. For Michael Palmer and Charles Palmer V, refer to chapter on multiple disappearances. Kevin Robert O'Keefe, missing. October 8th, 1985. Wolf Point, Glacier Bay National Park, Alaska. Age of disappearance: 36 years. Freedom of Information Act. Glacier Bay National Park is approximately 70 miles northwest of Juneau. The park sits in an extremely wild and remote area where the Pacific Ocean form a series of small to large inlets from a wide inlet going north from the region of Thunder Bay State Marine Park. Kevin O'Keefe traveled from his home in Sacramento, California, and arrived in Juneau on or near September 20th, eventually flying on to the Glacier Park headquarters. He enrolled in and attended a class about living in the wilds of the park. On September 22nd, he was flown by floatplane into Muir Inlet, just north of Wolf Point, where he established camp. He was traveling alone. On October 8th, 1985, National Park Ranger David Nemeth and his partner were patrolling the region of Wolf Point by boat when they stopped at Kevin's campsite. Rangers found a disturbing sight. Kevin's tent was near the high tide line, and this is also where they found a line of debris that appeared to be strewn by the high water mark. The ranger made special mention in his report about the tent having one pole inside that had come down. They found a sleeping bag, foam pad, and other items outside the tent lying on the ground. Rangers knew that Kevin was supposed to be picked up on October 10th and decided to leave his camp untouched. From reviewing National Park Service (NPS) reports, which were obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request, it appeared there was concern. Rangers went back to the camp the next day, but this time 4 rangers went. They found the camp just as it had been the previous day, and it did not appear as though anyone had used it during the night. The NPS did not conduct any searches, but they did call for Kevin and didn't get any response. On October 10th, Rangers returned again with additional assistance of an airplane, a Cessna 206 on floats. Rangers conducted a 2-hour flight over the area looking for Kevin, but they could not locate him. On October 17th, 1985, the Anchorage Daily published an article describing what NPS Rangers found at Kevin's campsite. Aided by search dogs, they found his boots and a hat half a mile away, down in a gully out of sight of the main camp. They found his food and caches too, but they never found any sign of the 36-year-old tourist. Later in the same article, Rangers speculated about what may have happened to Kevin. What happened to Kevin O'Keefe may never be known. Rangers have rejected early speculation he was eaten by bears. The Rangers stated there were no bear tracks anywhere in the area of Kevin's camp, and even added, quote, almost no wildlife of any kind. A review of the MPS report and itemization of Kevin's property indicates items were located at intervals of 60, 120, and 200 to 300 feet from his tent, and that his boots and knit hat were found in a gully. It appears everything that Kevin needed to survive was at his camp. He had survival books and pamphlets, film, food, a toothbrush, soap, cigarettes, vitamin C, a compass, a flashlight, and other assorted items that you'd expect to find in a campsite where someone was staying for over 1 month. Summary: NPS Rangers did contact Kevin's family and found that he had planned to take a series of short hikes from his camp on a daily basis. He had not planned on any lengthy overnight treks or meeting other people. Rangers had found Kevin's day back in an inventory search, indicating he had not left his camp. Kevin's glove liner was found several hundred yards from his main camp. His boots and knit cap were found almost a half mile from camp and found only with the aid of search dogs. If you have been a reader of cases I've outlined in past books, you'll understand how these clues start to look familiar. Patrick Wallen disappeared from Glacier National Park in Montana on November 2nd, 2000. His tent was found crumpled, same as Kevin's, and his boots were inside his tent. Patrick Wallen was 33 years old when he vanished, and he was never found. Parentheses, missing 411, Western United States. There are too many cases to quote where the victim vanishes and their shoes are somehow found, or the victim is found without their shoes. Alaska is a location that is not forgiving. You must have shoes if you are to survive. Rangers never answered the obvious question of why Kevin's sleeping bag and other items were outside his tent. This makes no sense. Rangers did not find any indications of an animal attack, and there was no blood located at the scene. Knowing that Kevin's boots, tape bag, primary bag, sleeping materials, and food were located at the site, one must deduct that Kevin was at his camp when something happened. It's apparent that there were no animals in this area, as Kevin's food was not disturbed. Why would Kevin take his boots off? Did Kevin voluntarily take his boots off? It's amazing how someone disappears in a mountainous area somewhat near a population zone, and hundreds of searchers participate in the hunt. When you disappear in a remote region, hardly anyone looks for the victim. There was not a week-long sustained ground search for Kevin O'Keefe. There were a few flyovers, boats cruising the coast, but not an extensive ground search. Why? It appears obvious that Kevin was somewhere inland from the point where they found his boots. Why not keep going deeper into the woods? If Kevin's boots and glove liner were found quite a distance from his camp, I would suggest a sustained effort to search in that direction. This effort was never made by NPS Rangers. Why? Michael Timothy Palmer, Charles Palmer V, refer to multiple disappearances chapter for details on these cases. Drifter here, we will be reading those in a separate video. Moving on, Gerald Berry, missing October 10th, 2011, 6:45 p.m., northeast of Fairbanks, Alaska. Age at disappearance, 53 years. It's a very rare event when a search team finds its missing party and then has to start searching for one of their own personnel. This is exactly what happened on October 10th, 2011, along the Stees Highway at mile 70 northeast of Fairbanks. Gerald Berry was a volunteer that responded to a call to search for Melinda Mindy Stratz of Utah. Berry was a veteran of other searches and knew the area very, very well. He responded with his green Yamaha Kodiak four-wheeler and joined the efforts to find the woman. This event started at approximately 2 a.m. when Mindy got separated from the other four-wheelers in her group. Mindy's brother, Michael Stratz, contacted authorities and reported her as missing. Michael went to the Long Creek Lodge and told law enforcement that his sister was lost on a trail coming back from the wilderness. He reported that her red four-wheeler, trailer, and Jack Russell Terrier had vanished. Alaska State Troopers responded and started to gather troops for a comprehensive search. In the morning hours of October 10th, a number of searchers had arrived to assist. Late in the afternoon, Gerald had made a comment to the others that he was starting to get cold. Other searchers built a fire and someone gave Gerald another overcoat. After Gerald got warm, he again went out looking for Mindy. As Gerald was out searching, another volunteer found Mindy alive and well near Frozen Foot Creek. There are a few other details available about Mindy's case other than what's been noted. Searchers started to gather and head home when someone noticed that Gerald hadn't come back to his vehicle. Several of the original search teams went out to look for him. It was reported that Gerald was last seen 4 miles from the trailhead they had started searching. Searchers were told that Gerald had medical problems, but the medical condition was not released to the public. Early in the morning of October 11th, 2 different helicopters with forward-looking infrared radar, FLIR, started scanning the woods looking for a heat signature. The Alaska State Troopers sent their helicopters and Piper's Super Cub, while the Alaska Air National Guard sent rescue teams to cover the ground. Formal and informal searches for Gerald continued for a week with no evidence of him being found. The owner of the lodge where searchers were staging was Paul Potvin, an old friend of the Berrys. The Alaska Dispatch on October 14th printed a statement from Paul about the search for his friend. Quote, "It's a mystery," said Potvin. "The four-wheeler is gone. Something had to have happened to him. He didn't get lost. Everybody agrees with that. He's been out there way too many times to get lost. That's the most baffling part. If Gerald didn't get lost, then where was his four-wheeler? If the four-wheeler was in the area at the time the FLIR was in the sky, it should have indicated a heat signature. It didn't. Or it wasn't there." Almost 1 year after Gerald vanished, on Labor Day 2012, a miner was walking near the Faith Creek mine at mile 69 on Stees Highway and found Gerald's four-wheeler. It was at a slight incline and the engine had been turned off. There was another massive search for Gerald in the region surrounding his vehicle, and nothing was found. Summary: I pulled maps of the Faith Creek area to understand the location where Gerald's vehicle was found. It was located one small mountain range to the northwest of Stees Highway. There is actually a roadway that travels from the highway north toward the mine. There is a small valley that borders the north side of the small mountain that moves parallel to the highway. It is extremely hard to imagine how Gerald was unable to find his way back to search headquarters, even if the vehicle had failed. The man knew the area very well, and conditions were such that it was no more than a walk of 3/4 of a mile back from the vehicle to the roadway. Gerald would have known not to walk further north because there was a larger mountain range in that direction. I find it very peculiar that aircraft with FLIR never found Gerald's vehicle. The Alaska State Troopers are experts at search and rescue and do this regularly. To look in a fairly confined area and still be unable to locate a vehicle with FLIR is odd. In one last attempt to find anything the night that Gerald vanished, the Alaska Air National Guard sent a second FLIR-equipped aircraft and swept the region, finding nothing. Gerald's sister flew to Alaska to assist with her brother's affairs. One of Gerald's sisters, Cheryl Hart, made the following statement to WTAB on October 20th. "We just have to keep the faith and hope, that he either wanders in or we find him. Gerald Berry has never been found. That was Missing 411, North America and Beyond, the last missing person in Oregon and the first 2 disappearances from Alaska. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and listening to these true disappearances. I hope that you were able to relax a little bit as you listened or even fall asleep. Again, thank you so much for the continued support, and if you are new here, I would greatly appreciate it if you enjoyed the content that you would consider subscribing. Regardless, thank you again, and I hope you have an amazing day or night. Remember, God loves you, and God bless you. Good night.